Thank you, everybody. So we'll start with our intention setting for this session today. Again, taking care of yourself, engaging as much as you are able to be engaged, and taking risks in your conversation and really thinking through where can I be vulnerable in these conversations with my colleagues, and what does it mean to honor the risk taking and the vulnerability of those in my space. Our learning targets for today, we tweaked them just a little bit. We want to, as we're focusing this session on implications for and with students, we want to prioritize this idea of play and its role in our community. And I know we've touched on this before. It's a huge thread throughout the book. So we're going to keep coming back to it and keep reiterating this is not a elementary or a preschool topic or concept. This is a universal concept, and we want to continue to bring that back into our own lives as well. And also, we want to be talking about strategies that build resilience, self-efficacy, and independence. The author frames this a bit as agency, so we'll dive a little bit more into what he means when he talks about agency. So in the interest of play today, our grounding is a bit of a celebration of St. Patrick's Day. We're gonna engage in a little shenanigans, but I that's as St. Patrick's Day-ish as we will get today. But I want to share with you a concept that you'll find in the dashboard from AJ Giuliani, which is this concept of in this era of distraction of our students, how might we move away from worshiping the problem and talking about all of these things that we can't control and all of these things that hover above us and are done to us? How do we reframe them in as an opportunity as opposed to a challenge? And one of the ways I've heard this framed as an opportunity to microdose hope. If you're familiar with the concept of microdosing, how might we inspire hope in these microdoses throughout our lives? And AJ Giuliani brings forward a few really big concepts that we think about when we're thinking about the screens in our lives and the technology in our lives. So I'll give you a moment to read that list. So AJ Giuliani encourages us to think about these larger than life problems and think about what is within our sphere of control and influence. And he provides this list of opportunities that go along with these challenges. I'll give you a moment to read those. I imagine one of these is probably resonating with you on the left side of something that you've thought about. I know AI has been a big part of conversation recently. Excuse me. And thinking about all of these things that are not within our control. What is within our control when we think about what we do in the classroom? So to turn this into some play, I'm going to give you a few smaller, more intimate challenges that you may face in your life and ask you to reframe them as an opportunity. And yes, I'm offering you Grumpy Cat to show that we're entering into a space of play and fun. So I'm going to give you a challenge and ask you to consider, how do I turn this into an opportunity? If I were to reframe this as an opportunity, how might I label it? What might I say? I'll invite you to put that into the chat if you are open to it, or jot it down and be thinking about this. And you do have the option of talking about it within your breakout as well. So the first low risk challenge I'll provide to you is that ran out of your favorite chips and you had to settle for a different kind when you went to the grocery store. How do you turn that into an opportunity? Saying try something new. You never know. Oh, up for something healthy. I appreciate that. Something besides Cheetos. I agree. Here's another one I'll give you. A student threw up in my office. I think probably many of us have had this challenge in our lives. I needed to have a break anyway. I like that. Take a walk. Deep cleaning of my office. Great time to throw things away. Love it. Here's another one for you. I accidentally hit the snooze button one too many times and I was 5 minutes late. The opportunity might be, hey, it was only 5 minutes. That's not many minutes. Oh, I listened to my body. Oh, it's not, and I can learn from that this is not the end of the world, that I was late and yet the world was still spinning. Oh, I could grab treats and be 10 minutes late. Love that. Oh, what great ideas. Awesome. Okay, one last one. I stubbed my toe. I love that. Share my humanity with staff and students. Time for a pedicure. Hmm. An opportunity to rearrange the furniture. I can model cursing and grace. Workers' comp. This is fabulous. I hope this is bringing some lightness to your afternoon. I appreciate this concept of worshiping the problem that we often spin, especially in this anxious generation content. We're pouring ourselves into things where we feel like I have so little control over this. So how do we reframe the things that we do have impact and influence over? And so I'm excited for you to think about that today. Before we go into breakouts, I want to offer an opportunity for you to check in on what you said you would do at the last session. So one of the things we ask is, what's the step you're going to take, or what's your first next step? So give you a moment to read what you and others said in that feedback. These are some of the themes that we saw in your comments, lots of different comments. So we want to give you an opportunity in your breakout today to talk about what you've been doing with this information that we've been talking about, what you've been trying. We've given you a lot of between session options and a lot of things to think about. So what's something that you've been either thinking about or thinking about and doing with others? So thinking about whatever range that was accessible to you that you were able to do. And or you can come back to this idea of the era of distraction and reframing our challenges as opportunities and no longer worshiping the problem. So give you some time. I'm going to give you about 8 minutes, and I'm opening up the room so that you can have some time together to have some conversation.
All right. I think everyone should be back. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you were able to connect and share some success stories or look for some advice and feedback on the work you're all doing. So we're gonna now shift our attention to the students. Well, I guess not really shift our attention, but from our fun game to the reality why we're here about students, screens, play, and so on. So first, we just want to kind of ground us in like why, the kind of big thing of why are students on screen so much? What is the appeal? And of course, we know, probably from our own lived experience and also from the book, is that social media is really such a draw. At a time in young people's lives that are really all about their social network, their social experiences. So, the author of The Anxious Generation talks about the four major draws of social media. So, of course, it's, that creation of a user profile, which is the opportunity to share personal information. But as I'm sure we all know and agree, it's really that select personal information. And in some cases, it's personal information that may only be a fragment of truth. It's that creation of a new personality, of a new identity. User generated content, creating content. What do you want to share with your social scene, with your social world? But again, really tailored, not always super authentic. And certainly, even if one person is, what they're receiving back from others is not always this, really reliable, real, authentic experience. So that's that networking. So we know that it's allowed for this much broader networking, which is, has some pros we'll talk a little bit about, but also makes this just this kind of almost surface level and even superficial social network, social crowd that they have. And then, of course, that easy, almost mindless, but yet very, very meaningful opportunities for interaction just through those likes. I know the book goes deep into that and how much pressure that, just the simple like can have, but yet it's this like really easy, weird way of interacting with others. So while we see this like, oh, it's expanding their social world, there's also this huge decline in really those authentic social connections. And that's a lot, some of what he talks about in the book and what we, I'm sure, have seen and experienced. It actually causes more of a disconnect than that real connection that we know, especially young people need as they're just building their social emotional skills from birth through 12th grade. Next slide. So we were talking about this today that we had this like, oh, it's so hard and these screenagers this now, and Gen Z is like, oh, it's just so awful, but hey, guess let's turn it into some opportunities. They have strengths too, and they're really, really valuable strengths. So I think, Liz, if you just click, this must be okay. So we know, and I will always speak from my experience right now as just having a daughter who's 14 and a son who's 10, but they're not in denial. We know that this generation, we're going to hear hopefully from a student today, that they want to really address this challenge and they're seeing the toll it's having on their social communities and how can they make those changes. Totally, a common openness to new ways of interacting. I even read an article that during COVID, the amount of young people like in their teens who started bird watching has skyrocketed. So really like this interest in trying new things, of new ways of interacting, of being together outside. Like who would think teenagers are into bird watching, but but they are. There's a lot of possibility. We know, and I'm sure here, fair amount in the media and maybe experience in the schools you're in, their really big desire to bring about systemic change and create a more just and caring world. And in some ways, that is due to the vast global networking opportunities they have through social media. So it's worth recognizing that, of course, that they are, exposed certainly to way more than I was when I was a teenager and are ready to, really address some of that injustice that's happening and can use social media to organize, to then come in community to do that work. And are turning their attention to the ways, that they see themselves being exploited. They see these tools being used more for harm than for good. So we know there's lots of really exciting opportunities that this generation brings. So how can we kind of help them balance that and be the support system that they need?
Thanks, Liv. And we want to elevate a graphic. Whoops, too many. want to elevate a graphic that is embedded in the one of the resources we gave you at the last session called the main idea. And the main idea is a resource that I think MASSP sends this out as well, but it's a monthly book summary, and they did The Anxious Generation a few months ago. And I found this graphic very helpful because it summarizes a lot of what's in chapter 2 and different parts of the book, where the author outlines what are things that children need and need to get, and what does that look like and when, and then what does that create when they become adults. So I thought it was important to highlight this idea and indicate what do we mean by each of these things. And I think we've talked about play, and we've framed it a bit, especially in our teaching or teacher session, about what does it look like in the classroom, what does it look like in perhaps a structured way, and what the author tells us is that free play is a valuable concept as well. That this free play is an opportunity to get hurt and to take chances, like hurt emotionally, not just physically, but to make mistakes in a way that's not costly. That maybe I hurt my friend's feeling, or maybe I play the game wrong, but I'm making mistakes in this opportunity that helps me learn from those. The concept of attunement, I found rather complex and interesting, that it's this way of taking turns that we have in our society that can be both joyful and unpredictable. So it's not a structured taking turns, it's more of a synchronous, synchrony was the word the author uses. And I struggled with that a bit, but I found that to be a really interesting concept. The idea of social learning being that of what we see in others. And what I find really important about this social learning is that in the vacuum of social media, we see what others are doing and we take that as an ideal, or we have a bias towards that. Well, you posted this on social media and my life doesn't look like that. Maybe it should. And then it creates the self-doubt. But social learning is about seeing what others are doing and also being able to discern this is right and this is wrong. I don't want to behave like this person. I do want to behave like this person, and when others are modeling around me. So I found that to be really interesting. And then the last one that he talks about is agency. And I want to touch on this a bit more because I found this to be a key insight. And he talks about this in terms of gender as well, that he defines agency as arising from striving to be individuals and expand and be efficient and competent and assertive. Whereas an equally important component is communion, which is creating that community and caring for others. And in the research that the author touches on, he talks about the research around boys are seeking agency, whereas girls are generally seeking communion. And that's for me a generalization. And I think as gender fluidity becomes more prevalent in the research, that research may change a bit. But thinking about those 3 students that we asked you to identify at the beginning of the session, if you think about those 3 students, what might they be seeking when you think about their behaviors and what they are striving for? Are they seeking more agency or more communion in their lives? And where might there be a gap or an opportunity for them in their lives? I'll give you a moment to think about that. Let's dive a little bit more into play, and Liv, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, so we want to spend a little time, and some of these next few slides you saw maybe earlier in one of our earlier sessions, or maybe are familiar with them, but Think it's really important for all of us to really reflect a little bit and maybe even challenge ourselves of what our mindsets or our assumptions are about what play is and looks like. I think, and I'm speaking for myself here, but a lot of times when I say play, or when I do a Google image for play, the first thing I see are little kids either on a playground or doing dress up, right? But play can look a lot of different ways, and play exists for all children. As Liz mentioned, or for all humans. We play too as adults. So, wanting to just really break down play kind of more on like some characteristic and like visual base. So play is typically self-chosen or self-directed, and we did also add it can be community chosen and community directed, which I think will be more common as children get older and are in community, and we're hopefully fostering those community real life relationships. But it's really about doing what they want to do instead of what they're being told or forced to do, right? It's that self-direction, their choices based on their interests as an individual, as a group of individuals. Also, it's individually constructed. It's not just a big jumble of activities and just randomness. There's always some sort of plan, structure that's happening in any type of play. Even, when we see children on playground, they're usually on some sort of mission or they're working with each other to create some sort of context of their play. And as they're older too, it's about, there's certainly structure and it's about a plan and meeting a need and a desire and an interest. I think we all know the process over the product, right? It's about all the learning and exploration that is happening while playing more than creating some final product. That may be a part of the play, but that's not the sole purpose of the play. Imagination. So this, we again, you could definitely might think, and maybe it's just me because I'm in early ed, but the idea, of course, imagination is a big part of young children's play, and fantasy play can and isn't all the only way young children imaginate, but is part of that. But I'm also thinking about older children or older students too, who are using their imagination to imagine a more just world or imagine something better or a dream that they have or a hope. So that's a level of imagination that should be part of play as well. And then active. And of course, making sure they have freedom of movement is really important for any human. I know we all like being able to move when we need to, but it also means active in terms of they're mentally active, they might be emotionally active, socially active as well. So those are some core components of play, and we can go to the next slide. We struggled a little bit with some of these, like, are they all characteristics? Are they some like number one characteristics and number two characteristics? But whatever, we're giving them to you, all of them, for you to just think about as you are looking for play. I think as you observe, these are sort of the things, the behaviors, the activities, maybe the vibe that you're getting if you're observing students that you'll see and you'll hear when you know that they're playing. Maybe not every single characteristic will be checked, but a fair amount of them should be. And certainly they shouldn't be prevented, like actively prevented from accessing any of these states of being, these experiences. So I'm not going to define all of these. I think, and you can see the power of play from Michigan State University for more details. But I just want you to think about when students have the opportunity to engage in these sorts of experiences. Is it always during free time or centers or recess or school, like after school activities? Are those the only times you think they have an opportunity to engage in active adventure, risk-taking communication, to be enjoying themselves and involved in an activity? Or do you think there are other ways that we are maybe already incorporating play-based activities or close to play-based activities into instruction? So I'll just draw your attention, for example, to look at that picture of students all raising their hands. They could certainly it could be a really like direct instruction, right? But I put it there because I think we can also think about that sort of environment or context as actually being a play-based activity. They could be doing something that is community constructed that they came up with on their own with the teacher. That could be a student too, right? So she might be standing there as the lead in some community constructed plan that they came up with. They certainly could be mentally and socially active, communicating with each other. using their imagination, perhaps imagining something, a plan they have, a service project, something they want to make better, something they want to do for the world to evolve or for their work to shape people or have an impact. And I mean, there's some smiles, so they could really be enjoying themselves too. Like, it's not like desks mean no play. There's still a lot of those opportunities. And I think it's important for all of us in my own work and for all of you to think about, to not think, well, we can't play because we don't have the time. But you can, and you might be doing it already. Your teachers might be doing this already in their classrooms, or maybe they just need a little help to just get a few more of these characteristics kind of activated in their work to make it a more engaging, meaningful activity. And we know that it's how students learn best too. So it could help take it to the next level for them and their academic experience as well. So just to think about and observe in your schools of where is this happening, where is this almost happening, and how can we enhance these opportunities, these play-based opportunities for children of all ages. This is something that happens with 12th graders too. Next slide. Okay, that all being said, we will talk a little bit about this idea of just really unstructured play, right? We know play can be guided, it can be structured through those rules, and some planning can be involved. And as we read in the book too, there's also a huge value for just that really unstructured play. I guess I would say there'll be still some level of structure, but just no plan, no desk, just like go and do what you need to do that time, right? I'm not going to read the quote because that takes time and you can access this on the Google Slides, but this is from the book. And so I think the next slide, when we think about unstructured free play, I know recess probably comes up, right? That's very much an unstructured time for young children. It's most frequently considered recess. We think of outside, jungle gyms. And we know that recess isn't always prioritized, or there's just not time in middle school and high school programming at some time. But we know that free play can look really different for 10th graders than it does for first graders. So I don't want to come here and necessarily say that everybody needs to cut out 30 minutes of their really tightly scheduled routine to make sure there's a recess, because it might look different for 10th graders. But that unstructured time is really important for all ages. I just thought of when Ann and Liz and I were talking about this, I reflected on my own high school experience, which is, of course, just a few short years ago when I was in high school. And we had a lounge, and maybe this is, I have not been in many high schools recently, but this like senior lounge, and we got to do whatever we wanted with this space. It was pretty much like a dorm room. And when anyone had a free period, which was not all at the same time, but we had like our study hall time or whatever, however our individual schedules shaped up, we just got to go into that lounge. We could use that time for free play. Really, it was social. It was very social. Maybe you did homework. Maybe you worked on a group project. I think we did have a TV at the time. That was pretty big. That was big tech. But it was really just that opportunity for freedom, social imagination, working on large projects, working on things that maybe were part of our role in the community as seniors. And I just think those times were really valuable. They were super valuable, of course, for community building. So again, you are all definitely much more experts in running high school programs than I am. But I just would say those aren't just downtimes or just these like, well, we don't know these screenagers are just doing nothing during this time. That could be a really valuable time. And if you're not seeing it used in these ways, what little things could you do in your routine to help that time or space that students might have be used in a more meaningful, valuable, play-based way? So I put this in the chat, Liz. Do we have time, or are we moving on to our next thing? Because we can either hold these questions or...
I think we should move on.
Okay, so save these questions and maybe for your own, work with your teachers or admin groups, or for your own thoughts of just what is recess in your context, whatever grades you work with, what does it look like, why is it important? And then, of course, How can you ensure recess opportunities for all? And I would encourage it to be as much as a screenless recess. One quick thing, Liz, sorry, I know I'm going on. But when I was Googling images of high school recess or high school play, all the pictures are playing video games or teenagers on their phones. I think it is our job as adults, working with young people to help remove that. It doesn't mean it's going to be banned necessarily or that we even have that level of control, but how can we help them have more opportunities for real social interaction, imagination, and so on. So, all right, sorry, thank you. I'll stop there.
Rose, did you have a question?
I just had a comment. I'm in a 5 through 8 building, and I know one of the things, and this has been the hardest thing for me, is like we have a recess built in for 5th through 8th graders, and a lot of them, they just don't even want to go outside, which now that the weather's getting nice, like I said, everyone's going to have to go outside, just stand and talk to each other. And they know it's like screenless, but I like the pictures that we have a playground. We're a middle school. We have a playground. And it's fun to actually see the kids that take advantage of that. But then I wonder, like, how do you get the other ones to realize, like, it's just even fresh air is good for their brains?
Yeah. Thanks, Rose. Valid point. We're going to hopefully hear a little bit more about that. So we want to get into our voices from the field because we're excited to have a student share with you today. And to segue into that, thinking about this bridge of, how do you make that happen? One of the things the author recommends is how are we as adults role models and mentors for that behavior? And how are we creating relationships where we are modeling these types of ideas for our students? So one of the things we learned about at the last session, the leader who shared with us mentioned Two Rivers High School and hearing about Live More, Screen Less. And so we have Tom Myers isn't able to join us today, but he created a short video that we're going to watch, and then we get to hear from one of his students. So I'm going to start that. I hope this is working. There we go.
To the Digital Wellbeing Club at. Hi, my name is Tom Myers, and I am a social studies teacher and the advisor to the Digital Wellbeing Club at Two Rivers High School and Mendota Heights. Thank you for inviting me here to share with you about the work of Two Rivers High School and the Digital Wellbeing Club. I am unable to join you today in person because I am helping host a log-off lunch in our cafeteria, but wanted to share with you on this video more about what we've done to increase the digital well-being of our students in school culture. For a little bit of history, in 2018, I met with our superintendent, Peter Olsen-Skog, to share with him my concern about device use in the classroom. That began a series of conversations, and in 2020, Live More, Screen Less, in conjunction with my students, held a community-wide panel discussion about the impact of devices on learning and well-being. It happened to be 2 days before the governor closed the schools for COVID. In 2022, Peter Olsen-Skog picked up the conversation again about digital well-being and invited Live More, Screen Less to partner with our school. Dr. Al Johnson invited Live More, Screen Less to better understand the impact of devices on our teachers and students. Live More held focus groups in 2022 with staff and our students, and that led to a whole community approach to what we now have as our device use protocol. It also encouraged students to get involved with digital well-being, and two of my students, Magda and Eleanor, joined the Live More, Screen Less Youth Council. They were trained as digital well-being leaders in the summer of 2022, and the same students invited me to be an advisor to the Digital Wellbeing Club. I am still in that role today. I'm glad you'll be able to hear from one of our students about its impact today. Our Digital Wellbeing Club really gained momentum when Live More, Screen Less held a youth summit in the spring of 2023, where we took 25 students that day of activities, discussions, and games with other students in the metro area. Freshman students who attended the summit are now juniors and have actively kept the club engaged in digital well-being. A few examples of the actions the club has taken include presenting to our school board, hosting log-off lunches, facilitating digital well-being sessions at a youth summit, Attending a youth leadership summit, students have also been interviewed by NPR, WCCO, and WCCO. Holding conversations with our middle school and elementary school students is another item they have done. Some of the things that I have noticed are that students enjoy being kids and openly share about times where they get to socialize and hang out with their friends without their phones. Students are highly worried about younger kids and share their concern that parents are not aware of the adverse effects of technology. And it is very clear that there is not an easy fix and that ongoing conversations and student engagement is needed. Two Rivers High School is a wonderful community. We have a little more than half minority enrollment, with a total student enrollment of around 1,500 students. Again, thank you for your time and interest in this important issue. Have a great day.
Thank you to Mr. Myers for recording that for us. And I'd love to welcome Olivia. Am I saying it right? Kanavati? Is that correct, Olivia?
Yes, yeah.
Hi, welcome. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I know Anne sent you a few questions about the digital wellbeing group at Two Rivers. If you could tell us about it and the impact of that group.
Of course. So hi, I'm Olivia Kanavati. I'm a junior at Two Rivers High School. So I'm a part of our Digital Wellbeing Club. It's basically a group of students that collaborates together as kind of a council, not really a hierarchy of any sort. We get together once a week and we just have open discussions about all things surrounding digital wellness and especially in a teenager's life. And Mr. Myers said before, like we visit elementary schools, we talk to middle schoolers, and we have been on the news before. We've been to youth summits, and our club just really encourages those discussions about how technology impacts our daily lives and how we can find the balance between using technology for all that it's useful for and the amazing benefits of that, but also having that balance of living life outside the screen and finding joy within life and like relationships with other people and still having that kind of life without the screen. And so in our club, like I said before, we've gone to middle schools and elementary schools, and I'll talk about that a little bit because I think it's really important to kind of reach out to the youth and have those open discussions, especially with younger kids. And it's been such a beautiful experience to be able to talk to them because they have so many more ideas than we would ever think of because they're so young and they're so open to having those discussions once prompted. And it's been a really beneficial thing to us because we learned so much about them and learned so much about what we can do to help them in this digital world. And so that's like one of my favorite things about our club is going to those visits with the elementary schoolers and the middle schoolers and just having those discussions. As for my personal experience in school, we have a cell phone policy in place. We can't have it out during the school day or during our school classes. And I think I really appreciate the tone that it sets in our classrooms because there's a larger sense of togetherness and unity when we're not sitting there on our phones or with our distraction right next to us. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to watch students, even my age, like talk to people and collaborate more on group projects or have open discussions with the class, whether it's about something you're not so interested in or something that you're very interested in. It's just such a beautiful way of like teaching and collaborating and learning when you don't have that distraction next to you. And I think I really appreciate that in our school. And that is one thing that prompted me to join the club is that I knew this cell phone policy was coming in place my sophomore year, so last year. And that got me interested in the club. And so I joined the club last year. And it's just been a really great experience having these discussions and learning more about myself and more about the digital world in relation to youth. And so I'm very lucky to be on this call today and have this experience or this opportunity to talk about all these things. And yeah, let me know if you have questions.
Yeah, I'll invite others if you have a question, feel free to unmute. I am wondering, Olivia, if you can share. You talked a lot about the students and learning from each other in the conversations you have. What are you seeing in changes from adult behaviors, and what are adults around you doing to help you make these changes?
So that's the thing we like to talk about a lot, just because having adult cooperation is such a big piece of digital well-being, especially in like the youth. And I mean, we're not perfect. Like we struggle with that all the time, trying to reach out to parents or just trying to get parents on the same page of like people can, or kids can have these lives outside of their screens. And I think that um, in visiting the students at the elementary schools and middle schools, we learn a lot about their parenting styles because they're very open about it. They'll share anything. And it's not as if we're going to go straight to the parents and tell them to get your kid off the phone. But I think it really starts with the kids because the more aware they are of their habits and their relationships with their screens and like their mood and like things like that, I think the more the parents are prone to recognize that their child has a distinguished relationship with the screen that can benefit them or not benefit them. And I think, yeah, it's a really hard question to answer just because adults are so hard to get to when we're just high schoolers. Like we're 16, not everyone's going to listen to us, and that's fine. That's why we enjoy going to the elementary schools, the young kids, because we can talk to them and then they will talk to their parents and their parents can talk to them about their day and say, hey, what did you learn today? And they can say, we learned that screens aren't everything and we can do things more than that. Like we can make bigger waves in the world and figure things out. And so that was kind of a lot to talk about, but there's no right answer for that. And we are doing our best to just keep the discussion alive and get those parents involved when they want to and when they are around us. We always encourage them to join us in discussing these things. But for us, it starts with the youth because that's our easiest outlet.
Awesome. That's so insightful. Thank you. Melissa, you had a question for Olivia.
Hi, Olivia. Yeah, I have a two sons college level, and one of the things I hear from my senior in college is that it's really hard to not be on your device when so much communication happens that way, meaning he plays baseball, so his coaching staff uses Snapchat to communicate to the team. Same thing in high school, and he just said that he's wanted to come off his device, yet it's such a deeper choice to make because it removes you from some of those key communications with the adults, but also with his group of friends. He feels like that's one of the biggest ways they communicate. And if he chose to come off, he feels like he'd miss out on his social group. So I'm curious as to what you guys were talking about relating to those things.
I can say I 100% relate with that. I play two sports. I play tennis and golf, and I'm always on there on Instagram, either posting for those sports to get people to come to our practices or things like that, or communicating with coaches about practice, like you said, and just using other apps for that. And so that is one of the major benefits of having the devices in our lives. Like we use it for so many things. Communication is crucial. I talk to most of my friends on Snapchat. I don't text any of my friends unless it's family or unless it's necessary. But so I would say having those outlets for technology or like those communication pieces is crucial to the technology. And what we like to focus on in our club is finding that balance between using the technology for all those benefits and that communication piece because it's so crucial and we need it. But it's also finding the other side of that balance of not staying on Instagram and doom scrolling through like reels or posts or things like that, and just focusing on the benefits of it and using it for what it's helpful for, not necessarily weighing yourself down and spending too much time on it and things like that. And it's very hard to do. I mean, teens all around me, even myself, like I struggle with that all the time, having too much screen time on certain apps. But then I struggle with it because I'm like, oh, I would love to delete Instagram because then I'll spend less time on it, less time doom scrolling. But then I'm like, well, wait, I have to post for this sport. I have to post for this club. I have to communicate with my teachers about this. Like there's a lot of things like that. But it's just crucial to find the balance between using it for all that it's beneficial for and using it for what it maybe isn't so beneficial for, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Olivia. That's so insightful. I know we need to wrap it up. I'm gonna put in the chat the feedback form for those who need to head out. I'm so appreciative of your time today, and we could keep talking about this for a long time. I know there's so much, but what I'm hearing from you is yes, there are necessities and we can use it for the things we need to use it for, and then we also need to be able to put it down for other things. And what I'm really hearing about your message is I can't do this by myself. I can't be the only one prioritizing off-screen time. It takes a community to make this decision because, yeah, I am going to miss out on things. So excited for you to share with us today. And we'll wrap us up because we're out of time by sharing some between session options. And please give us the some feedback. We put the feedback form in the chat. We're asking you to engage in some of the resources that we've shared with you today and thinking about students like Olivia in your buildings that you may engage with and ask them questions. That was such an important takeaway, Olivia, that we learned so much from our students and talking to them. They're the clearest pathway to parents as well. I heard that message. So thank you so much. I'm going to pause there. And if Olivia, do you have time to stick around?
It depends how much time you would like me. I do have a class right now, but I'm happy to stay.
Well, I'll just pause and see if anyone else has another question.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just and really a yes, no answer is fine. I wonder if the business model of social media companies and the attention economy and the idea that you are the product, that we as users are the product because what they're doing is selling our time to advertisers, is part of the conversation and could therefore help to point to solutions that are not about like I as an individual or we as a group need less screen time, but we need more agency over our screen time and over the things that are being shown to us.
I'm not really sure how to answer that. It's a loaded question, but I would say I think you're trying to ask about teens' attention with the products and how we use it in a beneficial way. Am I correct?
I think it's pretty well established that like the social media companies that have advertising, that there are ways to communicate that don't necessarily have advertising that like might be better than Snapchat for a team, for example, because anything that does have advertising is buying your time. So it's not like your will that's making it hard for you to not spend time there. It's because you're getting targeted messages that are sometimes really unfair to be targeted, especially at very young people.
I would 100% agree with that. I get ads and all sorts of things all the time on my phone, I know. And there's not much you can do about that, of course. It's a deeper level of that, but it's also how you spend your time on those apps. Like Instagram, I know is the main place I get it. And of course, I learned so much on Instagram. I see so many things from amazing sites and businesses and things like that, and I learn a lot. But then there's those distractions where it's like, buy this shirt for $5 and blah, 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 or things like that. And so spending time on a screen is such an intricate thing just because as much as you can learn something, you can also be negatively affected by something and distracted. And I think it's just knowing what you're looking for and knowing and being intentional with how you use your device and how you use the benefits of it, if that makes sense.
I just want to say one more thing. I read this week that that Facebook sold information about teenagers who deleted their selfies to advertising companies who then would contact, like through ads, would contact those same individuals with diet plans and, like eating disorder issues. And so I just think that when things are being sold and when our own concerns are being sold to companies as a basis for them to target advertising, there's a real problem. And I think that I'm excited to see what you're doing. I think your group is wonderful. And I'm also really excited to start researching like youth-led responses to that particular problem. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Anybody else want to ask Olivia a question real quick? Okay, well, thank you, Olivia. I appreciate your time, and we'll pause there. And thank you to everyone, and have a great rest of your day. I'll send a follow-up email with the recording for those who missed it. So
Thank you so much.
thank you, everyone.